What's the difference between a first-party special needs trust and a third-party special needs trust? I'm Jeff Stinson of the Stinson Law Firm, an elder and special needs law firm in Central Indiana. What's the difference between a first-party special needs trust and a third-party special needs trust? Well, let me start with a third-party special needs trust. A third-party special needs trust is typically an estate planning tool that's used by parents to protect an inheritance for a disabled child. For example, if a parent were to leave an inheritance outright to a disabled child, those funds would be countable assets and the child would lose their public benefits. But a parent can leave an inheritance into a third-party special needs trust and allow that child to benefit from their inheritance while also continue to receive the public benefits because that trust is exempt. Now, a first-party special needs trust, or sometimes you'll hear it called a self-settled special needs trust, or you might also hear it called a D4A trust because 42 USC 1396P D4A is the statute that creates these type of trusts, is a special needs trust that's actually created by the Medicaid recipient. And that's because Congress in 1993 said, we're going to allow disabled individuals to create this windfall. They can place their own assets into these types of trusts and also continue to qualify for public benefits. So one big difference between a first party and a third party special needs trust is a first party trust is going to hold funds of the Medicaid recipient. The beneficiary of the trust is going to put their own assets in the trust, whereby a third party, those assets are funded by someone else's assets. It's mom and dad's assets going to that trust. Another big difference between those two trusts is under statute, a first party special needs trust must reimburse the state for any Medicaid expenses that's paid out on behalf of that beneficiary first before anyone else gets funds out of the trust. It's called a payback clause. So in other words, state gets first dibs on that first party trust before anybody else. Whereas with a third party trust, the creator of the trust determines who gets the remaining funds in there after the disabled beneficiary, not the state. So mom and dad can say, I want my disabled son to benefit from this. And if there's anything left, I want my other children to receive what's left. That's the distinction, major distinction between a first party and a third party special needs trust.